Howarth in attendance. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, so as before, if you can introduce yourself, and then on if you are all three of you speaking or just yourself.
I will be running through the presentation. My name is Josh Caldicott, and I am the agent acting on behalf of Lovell Homes, the applicant.
Okay, so you have 3 minutes. Start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am the agent for the application representing Lovell Homes. In 2015, the council launched the Southwark Regeneration in Partnership programme. Its objective is to deliver 11,000 new council homes by 2043, working in partnership with developers. Lovell are delighted to be the council's development partner for the project. The site itself is vacant, has been for over 3 years, and was previously the location of a day centre. Situated in a residential area, the site is not encumbered by any restricted planning designations, be it nature, economic or heritage. The disused brownfield site therefore represents a sustainable and obvious location for housing. Providing 46 new homes and a ground floor for local community or office facilities, the development will be a positive addition to this part of the borough. The proposals include 22 much needed social rent homes, with 11 of these to be let under the local lettings policy. Layout of the development responds to the site's unique characteristics and has been rigorously tested from an aesthetic and technical perspective. It is acknowledged that the building is taller than its immediate neighbours. However, it's befitting of its corner location. The building is appropriately distanced from the existing homes, whilst also protecting the mature trees which line the south of the site on Southwark Park Road. The site has been subject to local community interest. Of course, it's not always possible to viably resolve all issues. Nonetheless, objections are important to us. We would like to offer the following comfort to issues raised by the speaker before me. Firstly, queries over daylight and sunlight have been raised. Reduction in daylight from the existing condition are inevitable, given the low-level buildings currently on site. Additional testing has been undertaken and the professional conclusions of our daylight and sunlight experts are clear. Adequate daylight sunlight conditions will be retained to the surrounding properties after the scheme is built. Reduced height studies showed that a reduction of height of 2 floors would improve the no skyline to pass for only 2 of the only 4 spaces where no skyline analysis was shown to be failing. Therefore, we believe on balance that the additional story is justified in delivering additional social rent affordable homes for the borough. There's been an understandable query over the nature of the ground floor premises. Both the council's regeneration team and Lovell are conscious of ensuring this does not become a desolate boarded up frontage. To enable flexibility, we've sought permission for the flexible B1D1 use. In this current economic environment, it is difficult to provide certainty on the end user. However, for the avoidance of doubt, Lovell and the council do not wish to intend to use the ground floor for retail. Mention was also made of construction impacts. Lovell take their responsibilities, considerate contractors very seriously, and both site safety and neighbourly matters are enshrined throughout our policies and procedures. A thorough construction management plan will be designed to mitigate traffic and sound disruption. In summary, the proposal will deliver 46 new homes, including 22 much needed social rented homes. There is a desperate need for affordable housing, and each of these homes represents a life-changing moment for those households currently on their council's housing list. I hope you can support the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Well done, Mr. Caldicott. You were exactly on time.
Thank you.
Councillor Morris has a question for you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly disappointed to have before us effectively a council's own development, albeit in partnership, where they are still having to make an off-site contribution towards the carbon offset fund. It is disappointing. The council declared a climate emergency, 18 months ago. Why are you not able to provide a scheme that doesn't have to provide any offset funding?
So to answer that, we've done everything we can to offset carbon on site. We've managed to achieve 35% on site. We did look at all other options to increase the amount of PV renewables delivered, and to achieve higher than 35%. This would lead to, essentially a reduction in the number of homes that could be delivered, and/or would mean it would be unviable to deliver that social housing. At the early stages of the design, we looked at the potential for the use of photovoltaics to meet the on-site requirement. However, we are limited as the building footprint allows only approximately 600 metre squares of free roof space, and where PVs could be accommodated. Using this site area would still not be sufficient to meet the target on site, meaning we would still need to utilise the offset payment. Additionally, it would both impact on other elements of the site's sustainability by removing the green roof, which is going to be required by condition, and prove more costly than the offset, impacting the site's viability. However, this scheme will make a carbon offset payment to offset the remaining carbon contribution.
Can I just follow up on that, Chair?
Yes.
So would you therefore suggest that maybe the council's ambitions are unachievable if it's not possible to deliver, as I say, even when it's effectively the council's own development? Would you say it's not possible to deliver the quantum of carbon savings that we're actually looking for?
Could I defer that question to Michael Howarth, who is also on the...
Of course.
Hello, Michael, can you just introduce yourself and say who you work for, please?
Yes, absolutely. My name's Michael Howarth. I'm a consultant at Hydrock. So I'm responsible for the building's energy strategy. And in terms of the targets, it's we've tried very hard to make the building's viability stack up, but any building over a certain height, it's not possible to provide entirely to provide an entirely net zero building, due to the fact that there's a large amount of the floor area to area set aside for photovoltaics. It becomes a diminishing area. So, for example, we looked at what area of photovoltaics we'd need to meet neutral, and we saw something in the region of 1,200, 1,300 square meters just of PV panels, which would require a roof area of something like 3,000 square meters, maybe slightly more, compared with what we have at the moment of 600. Obviously, there are things that as energy policy shifts and as heat networks expand, that will assist with meeting these goals. However, I think for this, given the constraints of the site, there is always going to need to be, there was always going to need to be a resorting to the carbon offset payment. I'd say, touching on that one of the benefits of the scheme is that as we've got a centralised heating system, it does allow for future connection to a district heat network. For example, we tried to look at the cell chip scheme, but there wasn't capacity in the nearest leg to it. However, as it's extended in the future, there will be capacity for it to potentially connect to that in future. So, whilst we are relying on the offset charge now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's completely unachievable, but given the constraints of this particular site.
So, Chair, can I just prod this a little bit further? So essentially, you're saying that on a building of this height, with these constraints, etc., that photovoltaics are the biggie, and it's the fact that you can't deliver photovoltaics. It's nothing to do with air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, fabric first insulation, passive house, or any other kind of approach to designing. It's all about photovoltaics. And
no, sorry, no, not to say that's the only approach. However, we have applied the reduction hierarchy on this scheme. We've been very careful to look at a fabric first approach. So, the building has good fabrics, good glazing performance, good air tightness, all of those values that you would do it. And we make, the target under the London plan is for 10%, a minimum of 10% of reductions. We double that. We're at 15% reductions just through passive means. We've then gone further with Be Green, so 50% of the building's energy load is via air source heat pumps. So that, you know, those are that we have looked at each of those technologies. However, you know, it is striking a balance between what makes the scheme viable and what we can achieve, and we have turned each of those stones in turn. You know, maybe I made it sound like it's just photovoltaics. I meant because we've filled it, we've gone through that route. That is what is left.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing that you've fallen short on is play space. Obviously, you've prioritised the under fives, but during this pandemic, we have learnt that people need their own space around them and not have to walk 100 metres or more, as the over 11s will have to get to Southwark Park. Can anything be done for the over 11s?
So in terms of the play space strategy, as you mentioned, we have been asked, or were asked during pre-application discussions with the council, to prioritise doorstep play for 1 to 5 year olds, and that there's a clear reasons for that, because obviously because you want that space to be accessible as possible for younger children, where they don't put themselves at risk by having to travel anywhere. In terms of older play space provision, the site naturally has a number of constraints that meant it would be difficult to deliver in excess of the play space that we have provided, namely those being the building footprint itself, the parking areas designated for the disabled bays. So basically there's a trade-off in terms of meeting the requirements of certain other policies too. It was also picked up in pre-application discussions with the council that we initially intended to provide play space on the eastern extent of the site, but due to that commercial unit basically having sort of windows looking straight onto it, it was felt by the council's design officer that this would be an inappropriate location to have children's play space, with basically the potential for people to be looking on children while they're playing and working at the same time. The site also benefits from being, you know, located very close by to Southwark Park, which I think is just a 3-minute walk away, and that provides a lot of expansive open spaces, more suited, we would argue, to older age groups, you know, where you're likely to play ball games or something of that sort. You know, given the site constraints, it would be impossible to have sort of high quality play equipment for older age groups with the limited space that we have. I suppose it's also worth picking up that we have also agreed in principle to pay appropriate contributions for the Section 106, which will go towards that space shortfall, and will go towards play-based improvements in the local area. So really, it's our belief that the delivery of the additional homes, and especially of the affordable, within the site constraints, sort of outweigh the disbenefits of the play-based shortfall. And I suppose there's one other thing which I did forget to mention. The trees, the mature trees, which are Category A trees on Southwark Park Road, we've had to, you know, the building has had to be set back further to ensure that those trees are protected, because we think they bring a lot to the site, and obviously it was never the client's intention to have these removed, but the root protection areas meant that, you know, the building did have to be moved back, and that has limited, you know, that has resulted in a small amount of the play space that would have been there falling away.
Who's managing the ground floor community area then?
That will be the council, so Southwark Council.
Right.
Oh, sorry, the community. Do you mean the community flexible use or the communal amenity area?
The community flexible use.
Yeah, that's being managed by Southwark Council, and they are in contact or have been in dialogue with a number of potential occupiers over the last year while we've been working on the scheme. I don't know exactly where they are up to with that at the moment, but yeah, that's been led by them.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got any questions? The applicant? Councillor Seaton.
Just a quick question, Chair, and I was just going through the report again to make sure of this. I thought there was an obligation on the part of the council, where it is a council collaborated development, to comply with our space standards. I thought there was an internal agreement that that would be met. Maybe the applicant or indeed officers here can clarify that, if that is the case.
Shall we ask?
Sorry.
That an application that is submitted which involves the council will meet at the very least our space standards, amenity space standards, because we have a long experience of estates not meeting our space standards within 10, 15, 20 years, having to be regenerated because they fail the sort of social test of people actually living there. So I understood that there was a requirement where a development was brought forward in conjunction with the council that all developments will meet at the very least our amenity space standards. I thought that was the understanding, but I'm happy to be corrected by officers or yourself.
Tim, do you have any idea about this?
I think it's probably important to distinguish, Chair, between planning policy standards and any other kind of corporate standards which the council may have. So with regard to whether the development complies with planning policy standards for space standards and amenity space, that is set out in paragraphs 47 onwards in the report.
So actually within the units themselves?
Yes, all of the units meet minimum space standards or exceed.
So, Tim, do we not have any space standards for the amenity space as a policy?
We do, Councillor Whittam. We have our generic amenity space policies. So, for example, new homes should provide 10 square metres of private amenity space per home, and we would usually expect that to be provided, certainly in the case of the kind of family size units with 3 bedrooms or above. And then we also have policies around communal amenity space, so 50 square metres of communal amenity space per block. If there is a shortfall in the private amenity space, then that then needs to be added into the communal provision. And then, as we know, on top of that, there's the requirement for children's play space.
Councillor Seaton?
Yes, so in other words, it is a sort of a commercial decision here. It is one for us to continue to consider the implications of some of our decisions in this regard. We know the long-term impact. If we don't get it right at this point, long-term impact will be disconnected communities, communities which become dysfunctional as a result of design faults. And this could potentially be a design fault. But I won't pursue it on this occasion, but I think it's a marker for future applications that we have institutional memory here for good reason, and we should use those memories to learn lessons for the future. And designs that ignore our past memory and mistakes really shouldn't be allowed, I don't think, but it is what it is. The application is the application is the application. There you go.
Okay, any other questions to the applicant? Councillor Morris? I didn't know whether yours was a legacy hand.
Yeah, no, well, I did take it down and put it back up again, but then realised you probably hadn't spotted me doing that. I just wanted, have we got any council officers from the team with you at all?
Yeah, Osama Shush, I think, was, well, not an officer. Obviously, Dipesh is the officer.
No. I mean from the application side, from the council house delivery team.
Sama Shush or Deborah
Yes.
Batiste to be on the call?
Deborah Batiste.
Hello, Deb. Oh, hello, Deborah. Yes.
Hello.
So one of the questions that the ward councillors have asked is that if we are minded to approve this development this evening, the 50% allocation that goes to nearby residents, I've forgotten what
Local lettings policy.
Thank you, Chair. Local lettings policy. The ward councillors have asked, can they be consulted on the radius, because it doesn't sit neatly within, it's not sort of contained within one estate. So that they would just put in a request that the ward councillors can be part of a discussion on who those properties might get allocated to, or the radius, not the specifics of who, but the radius that might include, if that's possible.
Yes, that could be considered.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's it, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Caldecott, for your presentation. We'll move on to anybody who is a supporter. Now, we haven't got any registered supporters. Beverly, is that still the case?
Yes, that's the case, Chair. No
Okay.
supporters present.
And nobody wants to speak up. Okay, so I don't think we have any Old Kent Road. No, it's not Old Kent Road. It's North Bermondsey. North Bermondsey. It's Old Kent Road on my script, but it's North Bermondsey in reality. So none of them present. So we'll move on. So any further questions or clarification to the officers? Adele, is that a legacy hand?
Legacy hand, sorry, Chair.
Okay, so we'll move on to debate whether, Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quickie on the design, and that was mentioned by the objectors. Can I just ask if either the applicant or Michael or whoever just did talk about this design and why is this design appropriate in this current low-rise setting?
Thank you, Chair. I didn't introduce myself to the meeting earlier today. My name is Michael Zakaris. Thank you. I'm head of design and conservation, and have been advising Dipesh and his team on this application. I think Dipesh summarised the comments that we made on and our feedback on this proposal, which was that the site is whilst it is sat and located within a sort of a mix of heights of 3 to 4 to 5 stories, 3 to 4 stories. It is well separated from its neighbours, and for that reason, and also behind quite a significant screen of mature trees. And I think that those are the two aspects that really we took into account when we considered it. When we considered it, we looked at how it sits within that street scene, and its separation allowed and gave it some elbow room to vary slightly. What is, I suppose, is a matter of judgment, is whether 5 stories or 7 or 6 stories or 7 stories would be appropriate. And to be honest, I think the proposal, we thought, I mean, it's not far away from, say, the Four Squares estate, which is just up the road, and is at 7 stories, and it is significantly larger buildings than the ones on Southwark Park Road. So it is a matter of judgment, but we felt, given its separation, its setback from the street, and its articulation, its T-shaped plan, which does give high quality dual aspect, the majority, a high majority of flats being dual aspect, we felt that contributed positively to the way that that the design would be appreciated and seen. I do want to mention, and the point that Councillor Seaton, you raised about standards, we take a very clear consideration of all the space standards, and they do include communal amenity and all that. I think but we have to look at each site on its own merits. And in this particular instance, when we see that the building had to be set back significantly to allow and to retain those large mature trees on the front, you realize that actually there is quite a lot of space around the site, but it couldn't be marshaled into a communal amenity space. It is part of the sort of public realm that is around the building. And I guess you know, if we dedicate a space that's called for play space, then it needs to be fit for purpose. And for that reason, there was sort of limitations on the site towards the back of the site, which was which meant that only the space towards that back of the site was suitable for communal amenity, because so much of the site to the front is dedicated to setting back from the street to allow the trees, and on the two sides, on Latham Street and on Southwark Park Road. So those are the sort of balances, the judgments that we had to take into account when we arrived at this proposal. It is fairly self-contained and, as I say, well separated from its neighbours. It doesn't you know, it doesn't jump up sort of excessively, and it didn't, in our view, jump up excessively. It felt like it could be part of that urban setting that you referred to earlier, Councillor Seaton.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would you like to sum up what your thoughts are, Councillor Seaton?
Yes, I can do that, Chair. I think on balance, noting Michael Shikawa's final comments, on balance, this is an excellent application in many ways. It does meet one of our principal objectives, that applications should favourably seek to build homes which are truly affordable. And I'm very conscious that we've had a number of applications which are borderline, but generally this is a good application and it meets our targets in respect of our housing emergency. Secondly, I'm going to accept Michael's comment on the design, and I suppose what he's really saying is that the area which could have been designated for slightly older children is not officially being as such, but most probably will be used by them anyway. But I accept that as an observation, and I also accept that the site has its restrictions. And I visited the site to satisfy myself, but I'm always going to keep reminding both Michael and others that there are good reasons why we've had numerous regeneration projects in the borough, because of past designs which have received, I recall, prizes, international prizes, after 10, 15, 20 years have been found to be a social disaster. And therefore, we and I will continue to look critically at the designs, consider the space standards, both internal and communal space standards, and COVID has highlighted the need for this. But I'm also satisfied that the building has sought to, as far as possible, to satisfy our sort of climate change policy responses and carbon capture. It is frustrating that we don't seem to have the materials to allow full compliance, and I am in total agreement with Councillor I forgot your name now, but anyway, I forgot your name.
Councillor Morris.
Oh, Councillor Morris, there you are. It's too late in the evening. I totally agree with you that we should continue to strive and demand wherever possible that we don't want contribution to our carbon offset fund. We actually want the buildings to fully comply book policies. That is the direction of travel. We have no choice in this particular matter. I'm not sure what the solution is, and notwithstanding the technical response you received to your question, I'm not sure the solution is to this one at the moment, but I suspect it's one of those policies we need to keep reviewing, so that I'm not sure we've had full compliance yet, Councillor Morris, ever, whilst I've been chair, which suggests that your question was apt. Is the policy too far, or are we not yet in the application development stage being sufficiently challenging enough towards the applicants? I'm sorry, I'll try and talk my phone.
Yeah, your time's up.
And I'll pause there, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wai. Thank you.
Councillor Salmon, would you like to add anything?
Honestly, Chair, I think it's all been summed up, hasn't it? I am in agreement with what my colleagues say, particularly what Councillor Morris said before. It's disappointing, but we are at the point where it is what it is. But I am in agreement with Councillor Seaton and what he said. He's covered everything pretty much.
Yes. Councillor Leaming?
Yeah, I think the issue on the height one is difficult because it is subjective. I mean, I'm sitting in my my terraced house in SC15 and looking out of my window at a 13-storey tower block, which is 150 yards from my house, and it's you get used to it. It's I think it is one of the functions of living in a city, and although I think I can understand why people who live nearby are concerned about the change, I don't. It doesn't, to me, feel like grounds to object to it.
Councillor Browning?
Yeah, Chair, I think I agree with comments made. I share the concerns about that Councillor Morris raised on sort of climate policy. But yeah, I think especially the provision of socially rented homes, I think I'm minded to support approval of the scheme.
Councillor Chopra?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the question has been raised that there is a serious concern about the 7 stories, which I fully understand. And there are other small issues which I raised. But one thing I agree with Michael, what he said, because this building is a very self-contained, and keeping our policies, other policies that we have to provide 11,000 houses. So we have to compromise somewhere, and like my colleagues said, especially Mr. Seaton said, that this is a good scheme and this will comply with our council policies to provide houses. Then I think, especially looking into urban area these days, these sort of buildings are coming up and we'll see much more of these. So keeping all those new changes coming up in the area and in the country, I think this seems to be acceptable at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Morris?
Thank you, Chair. I think we just have to be very careful not to get obsessed with numbers. We've all been complaining to the Tory government about their obsession with numbers above all else. Whilst obviously it is welcome to have council accommodation provided in this development, I am disappointed that you know, given that it is effectively a council's own development, albeit in partnership, that it is not an exemplary scheme. Because if we can't set an example of an exemplary scheme, you know, we're talking about cleared sites. Yes, okay, there's a restriction with the trees. I get all that, but you know, we have our policies. And you know, when you set out, you work out what policies you need to meet, and you look at the space you've got, and then you work out how to meet those policies. Not sort of, this is the building I want to build, and let's squeeze in the policies if we can. That's not how it works, and I'm just disappointed in the council. I'm also, you know, the point that Councillor Seaton raised earlier on. You know, if the council's housing department or the council sort of separate to the planning department has its own sort of visions and policies and standards that are different from the planning ones, then, and this is effectively a council's own development, then why on earth are we not meeting those policies, regardless of whether, you know, as a planning committee and as planners, it's being judged on the planning policy, but why aren't they meeting their own ambitions? I think it's a real shame. But having said that, none of it is failable. In the sense of it being, you know, something that I think we could refuse. You know, despite the fact that obviously we had policies numbers quoted at us from the London Plan, from the NPPF, and from the Southwark Plan by the objectors, but I don't think that's sufficient to refuse it. But yeah, I would like my disappointment to be passed back to the council's housing department in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. It seems like most people would like to approve this application, albeit with some reservations. I share the reservations of Councillor Morris on the carbon offset fund, but particularly about the play space. I find that hard to accept because we keep saying, oh, they can go to Southwark Park. Not all teenagers like to kick balls around or throw or hit or do any sort of sport. They need their own space, but it doesn't have to be a sport space. Anyway, I am going to move a motion to adopt the officer's recommendations. We have to look at the addendum for the amendment to condition 6, which is about the play space and the landscaping, and it requires the applicant to provide details of the play space as condition 6, as well as the landscaping. So if everybody's happy with that, I'd like to move the motion that we adopt the officer's recommendation set out in paragraph 1 of the report on page 13 of the main agenda pack, and the adjustment to condition 6 in the addendum, and we will also note the rest of the addendum, including the SIL figures which appear in the addendum. And that planning permission be granted subject to conditions and completion of a legal agreement. In the event that the legal agreement is not completed by the 1st of February 2021, that the Director of Planning be authorised to refuse planning permission for the reasons set out in the addendum report. Does any member of the committee wish to second this?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Seaton. We'll now move to the vote. I will call upon the voting members of the subcommittee by name and ask them to confirm whether they vote in favour or against the motion or wish to abstain. Councillor Del Morris.
In favour, Chair. Oops. In favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Browning, for, against or abstain?
For, Chair.
Councillor Chopra, for, against or abstain?
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Seaton, for, against or abstain?
For, Chair.
Councillor Leeming, for, against or abstain?
For, Chair.
Councillor Salmond, for, against or abstain?
For, Chair.
And I'm Councillor Kath Whittam, and I vote for the motion. So the motion is carried unanimously. So that's the end of item 7.1. We'll move straight on to 7.2. Chevron Apartments, 274 to 304 St James's Road, SC1, SJ6, pages 65 to 141 of the main agenda pack and addendum. So the officer for this is Alicia, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's me, Chair.
Are you ready to present?
Yes. I will also start by sharing my screen, and if there are any issues, please let me know.
Thank you.
The proposal before you tonight is situated along St James's Road, and which is shown bound in red on the left-hand side image of the screen.
Can you do that as a slideshow?
Yes.
We've got
Chair.
all the round.
Sorry, there we go.
That's better.
Right. The site that we're looking at consists of a former 3-storey office building, which makes up almost all of the site and which has been converted into residential under permitted development. Committee considered and approved a scheme which would provide an additional 8 units to the Chevron building. Just to orient ourselves a bit more, the next slide looks at the surrounding context today with a selection of images from the neighbouring buildings. This includes the Bermondsey work scheme on the junction of St James's Road and Rotherhithe New Road, the adjacent former Lobo meat factory, which is currently vacant, and then immediately to the south of the site, that's the top middle image. The site adjoins the rear, the Six Bridges Industrial Estate, the St James's Industrial Mews, and to the north, and a terrace of Victorian houses also to the north. The image of which is shown running across the middle of the slide. The bottom of the slide. These are the only purpose-built residential accommodation in the immediate area, with the exception of the Bramcote and Bonamy Estate, which lies on the other side of St James's Road. As you would know, the proposal is found within the Old Kent Road opportunity area designated in the London Plan. The site that we're looking at specifically is located within site allocation OKR 11, Marlborough Grove and St James's Road of the Draft Area Action Plan. And it's quite central to the allocation, being located along the middle of the eastern edge. So I'm just going to hover above. And if I just switch slides, the plan to the left is an extract from the Area Action Plan showing the master plan and the change that is expected for this area. The site is located within the Old Kent Road Strategic Protected Industrial Land, but however, in this case, the principle of the land use as residential has been established through the permitted development and the subsequent permission. The proposal is consistent with the AAP that doesn't envisage that any industrial uses will be provided on this site. Focusing back down onto the site that we're looking at this evening, the proposal under consideration is for a scheme which would deliver 15 new homes through an upwards extension. This is accompanied by a number of associated works, including landscaping and cycle strategies, which will be discussed in more detail as we go further along in this presentation. The following slide on the screen focuses down on the quality of the proposed accommodation, which is considered to be excellent by Southwark standards. All of the units are dual aspect and all the rooms are served by at least 1 windows. The units also all meet the minimum standards, both in terms of individual room sizes and overall flat sizes, with 74 exceeding that minimum, which again are some of the criteria set in the SPD for exceptional residential standards. All units also have their own private amenity space, and amenity we'll get on in the next few slides of the presentation. At this stage, it may also just be worth highlighting that the modular build of the nature of the scheme, which in part allows for the quality of the residential units, but also offers the benefits of less on-site construction time and a better performing building fabric. The next image shows a typical floor plan layout and how the proposal would sit within that rooftop space and the range around the existing skylight. So in addition to the private amenity space, the scheme would also deliver on new policy compliant levels of communal amenity space and play space. The report goes into some detail about the provision, but to summarize, the space that has been identified specifically as communal is in excess of the policy requirement, which on this site is particularly welcome given the lack of existing amenity for the Chevron residents, and particularly that these will be made available to both the existing and the new residents. The image on the right-hand side of the screen just shows where all those different spaces would sit. Of the 15 units, 38.1 as measured in habitable room would be affordable, which in unit terms would translate to 4 affordable homes. Although this exceeds the 35% minimum, all the units have been proposed as intermediate, so it falls short of the required mix of the policy. The viability that accompanies the application has been subject to a very detailed review by the Council's advisors, and the current mix on offer is the most that the scheme can support. The scheme initially submitted saw the 4 intermediate units being for shared ownership, but this is now being proposed as London Living Rent, which would contribute to the Council plan commitment for the delivery of 1,000 London Living Rent homes by 2022. In addition, the applicant proposes that all of the units will be offered to key workers, the definition of which is the one that was reported to Cabinet on the April 7th of this year. The next slide shows the scheme's evolution and how the proposed massing has allowed for these various amenity spaces to be created with the consolidation of the heights towards the portion of the site fronting St James's Road. Daylight and sunlight assessment has also been provided, which is set out in the main officer report. This demonstrates that there will be some deviations from BRE guidelines, but which are considered to be minor. A similar exercise has been undertaken against the conditions of the extant scheme. These show minor variations, which are also considered minimal when using the extant scheme as a benchmark and are outweighed by the benefits of the scheme. In terms of height, we're looking at a Part 3, Part 4 story addition, which would result in a Part 6, Part 7 story building. And this slide just shows how the massing would sit within that resulting streetscape. The proposal follows the guidance in the AAP and the stations and crossings policy. That states that a Tier 1 building could be located on the junction where St James's Road meets Old Kent Road, but that along this portion of St James's Road, so the area in the middle where the site is located, the AAP states that buildings of up to 8 stories would be acceptable. And again, the next slide shows how the resulting building would sit within that emerging allocation and following that hierarchy of heights that is within the AAP. The detailed design of the scheme is of high quality. It incorporates a modern element to the existing brick building. The proposal is for a simplistic metal pallet with muted concrete frames, which members will remember was previously steel. The frame is structural, but it has been designed to frame the existing windows and to carry down the rhythm that is set on the upper levels to the ground and allows the integration of the 2 elements. The detailed design strategy picks up on some of the existing materials, including metal and glass element, which characterize this area. The image of the glass is of the Evelyn Primary School, which is the closest building with a formal listing designation and which is located about 19 meters away at its closest point from the application site. The image on the left-hand side just shows how these materials are carried onto the detailed design of the elevation. This strategy again is consistent with the AAP, which requires development to be designed to reflect the functional and industrial uses of this allocation, using materials such as brick, concrete, and a natural colored metal. The next slide is a visualization of what the building would look like, and also from this angle show how the proposal frames in response to this new east-west connection, which is an important public realm intervention that is proposed as part of the master plan for this area. So this one. Sorry, I am trying to move on, but I think my screen has frozen. Oh, there we go. The landscape strategy and greening of the site is an integral part of the vision for this scheme. There are broadly 3 levels of intervention, which are broken down as works to the ground floor, replacing various hard standing materials, which have remained from its commercial use with some softer landscaping. On the third floor, where there is no communal space proposed, the remainder of the roof will be greened, and it actually results in quite a substantive greening of a previously impermeable surface. Whilst those will serve as visual amenity, it will also contribute to other benefits, such as enhanced biodiversity and attenuation. The final roof level will also be green, and together with the bird boxes would provide a biodiversity net gain on this site. This scheme being an Old Kent Road scheme, there is an additional requirement of 5 square meters of public open space on the site or a financial contribution, which, given the nature of this proposal, has been secured as a contribution. This will go towards funding the delivery of the linear park. There is nonetheless some greening which is proposed to the forecourt in the form of a new boundary treatment. And that would, in effect, introduce some softscape along St James's Road, which is a welcome addition of the scheme under consideration. Sorry, this slide came slightly earlier than it should have. This is the slide that we're talking about now, which is the cycling and refuse strategy. This is a car-free development. And the initial application saw a strategy with additional bicycle storage to the front of the building, where we received a number of representations regarding the location of the cycle storage, and the applicant now proposes that the consolidation of the existing store and the courtyard rack to accommodate enough parking space for new and proposed residents of the Chevron building. Similarly to the waste management strategy, which would follow the existing arrangement, and both would be secured by condition. I'm going to just move back for a second. 19 consultation responses were received, 17 of which were objections. These are considered in full in the report and the addendum, and some of the reasons are on the screen on the left. Finally, to conclude, is a summary of the proposal. The proposal would deliver 15 new homes, 13.1% of which will be affordable, and that includes 4 London Living Rent homes. The quality of the residential accommodation is considered to be excellent, in addition to all of the communal and play space that the scheme is able to meet. There'll be new cycle storage and bin storage for all residents, which is secured by condition, as I said. And a connection to CellChip has also been secured. The proposal is modular build, again, to reiterate, reducing the on-site construction. And the scheme would also result in substantive biodiversity and greening onto this site. When all matters considered, the recommendation before you this evening is that planning permission is granted, subject to the conditions in the report and addendum and the completion of a legal agreement.
Thank you, Alicia. We are now at 8:25. So before we take questions to the officer, we'll take our 5-minute